Elka. Today we're going to look at the strategy of making connections. There's a lot of research on that strategy of connections. And it says that the more connections our children make as they read and as they listen to us read to them, the greater their understanding of new knowledge, and also their comprehension. So let's look at some strategies and activities we can do so that we can make connections on a daily basis in the classroom, both whole group and small group. You see behind me two posters, connection posters. When we talk about making connections, we'll talk about two kinds today. We'll talk about text-to-self connections, and we'll also talk about text-to-text connections. The strategies for both of these connections are to give students specific things to connect to. Because if we just say to students, make a connection, we often get surface level things, such as, there's a dog in the book, I also have a dog. There's a dog in this book, there's also a dog in this other book. We want our connections to go deep. So these are ways right here of helping our students to go deep with connections. For example, when we talk about connections to self, we say to students, think about the characters. Think about the character's strengths and the character's weaknesses. How are you like them in terms of their strengths and weaknesses? Think about what the character likes and dislikes. And how do those likes and dislikes affect how the character is reacting in the story? Think about reactions in the story that the character has to things that are hard, to friends, to family members. Think about the character's personality. So do you see when you give students more things to connect to, they don't just give you that bland line of I have a dog, the character has a dog. Also, when you're thinking about characters, think about friends, family members, not just yourself. We then can say to students, think about the setting, not just, it takes place in there's woods in this other story too. But think about the setting in terms of places that you've been to, places that you can use that describe using your senses. What do you hear? What do you see? What do you smell? What other settings would you hear the same things? Would you see the same things? Think about problems and solutions in the story. Think about how the reactions to those problems are. Think about the reactions to those solutions. What would you do compared to the character in that story when it comes to problems and solutions? Think about plots and events in the story. So think about, have you ever been to a place like that before? If the story takes place at a circus or in the desert or at a beach, make connections to your world in terms of those plots and events. All of these same things are great for both your text-to-self connection and text-to-text connections. The more specific things we help students to make connections with, the deeper that they can go. So here are two posters from a classroom. Here's text-to-self, and here is text-to-world. And again, today we're just looking at text-to-self and text-to-text. But look at the activities. You see the Post-it notes. As students are making connections, we are putting them on Post-it notes. So in your classroom, I would recommend having two posters, text-to-self, text-to-text, and then as you are working with different stories and they make connections, put the connections on the Post-it notes. And so this gets full of all of their connections to look back on. And when this gets full, we take all of these Post-its off, staple them together, and you have a little mini book. One other activity that you can give to students at their seats are connection cards. It just says connections. In it are Post-it notes, text-to-text, text-to-self. As they are reading, they just take these and they put them in the book where they make the connections. So have a great time making connections with your students.